We are 3D artists, and as 3D artists, time is money. And I gotta be honest, I'm seeing a lot of you wasting your time. But that stops today, because in this video, I'm gonna show you a bunch of tips and tricks that will stop you from getting bottlenecked by long, tedious workflows. I'm gonna start this off strong with the cloth simulator because, to be honest, a lot of wasted time goes into making outfits for characters and the like, and it really doesn't have to. You can basically just make a blank in actually a lot of the same way that you would for sewing if you were doing that in real life, and just give it sufficient divisions because we're going to use the cloth simulator. And then you can just extrude that along this axis so that it fits over your guy. Don't worry too much about it looking crazy like that because we're going to fix that up in a second. Remove all of the faces around the neck hole because obviously there's no cloth in there, and basically what you're going to do is just cut all of the faces off anywhere that cloth wouldn't be on an actual shirt. And don't worry that it looks kind of Minecraft right now. Like I said, not a big deal. Once you have those taken out, you just go up to your top view, pop it into wireframe view, select all these faces, say delete only faces, and then you're left with these kind of thread things. And the reason that I'm calling them that is because we're going to set the cloth simulator up. We're going to set the cloth thing, and we're going to go into shape, and we're going to turn on sewing, and then we're going to set our guy as a collision object so that the cloth has something to collide with. And I'm going to pop it into the timeline and play the simulation, and boom, shirt in 2 seconds. Now, is it perfect? No, but if I go into the cloth simulation, apply it, and I grab the edge loops around here and merge them, it'll be pretty darn good. Throw a little subsurf on it, fiddle with the scaling so his nips aren't poking through, and we're all good. Look at that. Silver Giga Chad has a shirt now. Aren't we happy for him? Maybe I should make him some pants too. Another one I see people wasting tons and tons of time on is sculpting out pillows by hand. You shouldn't do that. Do it the lazy way instead. It's much, much easier and much less annoying. Basically, just add a plane, extrude it, give it a handful of divisions around the middle part, then a bunch of divisions on either axis so you have a little bit of geometry to work with. Orient it, basically in a way that you think it'll look nice when it falls on your couch or whatever. Then set your couch as a collision object, make your pillow a cloth object, and go into the physical properties, check pressure, because we're gonna give it a little bit of puff, set custom volume, give it a decent size volume, and give it a little bit of pressure to start with and see what that looks like. Hey, perfect, first try. And you can put a little friction on it too so it doesn't slide down the couch like that. And the great thing about this too is you go to the beginning of the simulation, you can make as many of them as you want. And then when you're happy with the shape of your pillow, you can just grab it, apply the cost simulation, and suddenly your topology will be pretty nice, actually. And if you want a little more detail, you can always throw a sub D modifier on it, and you can even sculpt in some stuff afterwards, but I always recommend doing this because it's much faster. Another one I see people agonizing over a lot is putting perfect quad circles into your mesh faces and keeping good topology. You don't need to worry about that. Just go up to the preferences thing, go into add-ons, enable loop tools if you already have it. If you don't, go get it from extensions if you're on 4.2 and newer. And it's free, so literally nothing to lose here. It takes a half a second to add, and once you have it, it pops up in this edit menu in the end panel. Grab the faces that you want to be a circle, generally try and make it squarish, and click circle. And that's literally all you have to do. And look, perfect quad topology. You can extrude it in, you can bevel it, you can do whatever you want because it's, again, perfect quad topology. Never worry about that again. Now that you have loop tools installed, it's perfect time to show you another one of the cool things it can do. If you have a chain of vertices like this, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. I just had that in my example, but it could be curved, beveled, whatever. And you want them to be evenly spaced, but your topology is a little bit of a mess. Just grab them and go to loop tools and click space, and it will perfectly space all the vertices along that chain. And this works if it's curved, straight, whatever. Another thing I see people doing constantly that's a pretty big mistake is if they're trying to extrude an edge that's a complicated shape like this, they'll extrude it and scale it, or maybe they'll even use scale locking, and you get this kind of mess around the edges where like it doesn't scale right in some places, and then you end up wasting a ton of time cleaning up this edge and like trying to position it, and it's awful and it sucks, and you end up hating your life. And don't do that because that's dumb, and there's a much easier way. Instead, go and open preferences, and again, another free add-on like loop tools. This time it's called edit mesh tools. I basically say anyone who gets Blender should just immediately install these before you even do anything. Install the edit mesh tools thing from either extensions, or if it's an older version of Blender, it's already built in. Turn it on and never worry about this again, because now you can select the edge and do Control E, and that'll get you your edge tools. And there's this new little menu that pops up here, Offset Edges, and just click Offset Edges, Extrude, and there you go. All you got to do. Look at that, perfect extrusion. And it gets even better because it works on faces too. Now, instead of doing Control E for edge, I just do Control F for face and extrude faces along normals. And look at that, pretty good. And if it's not quite even, you can go over here and just make sure you check Offset Even, and then all of the offsets will be even. If you find yourself making nuts, bolts, and whatnot frequently, don't bother. Instead, go to Preferences and enable Bolt Factor. If you don't have it, get it from Extensions. Again, it's free. And then you can just go Add Mesh, and you can go to Bolt, and you'll get a bolt. And you can actually change a ton of the different properties of it if you want. If I go add another one here, you can see that. I can change the shank length, diameter, head type, and all sorts of, my God. And I can change all sorts of other crazy stuff. Wow, that's a really tall bolt that I just made. Oh my God, okay. Well, maybe it's for putting a wall together or something. You can also change the head height. You can have it Allen key. You can have Phillips screwdriver key. You can have Torx. You can't have flathead because that's for losers. And you can also make it into a nut if you want. And there's a bunch of different types there too. Play with this. It's free. It's awesome. The bolts are a little high topology, so if you're pretty topology constrained, you might still have to model something or down res these a bit, but it's better than doing it all by hand. If I see you trying to join two faces of equal vertex count by doing this, and like extruding and trying to put the two together, I'm gonna come through the screen and slap you because there's a much easier way, and I want you to remember it, and that's to select both of these faces and do Control E and go into Bridge Edge Loops right here. And look, they're combined, but it's ugly. So look at this. You can go in and add more cuts if you want, and now it's nice and smooth. And you can even change the smoothness. So if you want it to be sharp, you can make it sharp. If you want it to be a little more relaxed, you can make it relaxed. You can even add twist to it if you want. And you can change the profile shape to pretty much anything you want. One other big time-saving thing you can do with the Edit Mesh tools installed is you'll get this little extra thing when you go to add mesh called Single Vert. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a single vert. And if you use the single vert, you can make pipes in a way that's much easier than normal. Ooh, what the hell did I just do? Whoops. And basically what you want to do is go into edit mode, go to vertex mode, extrude your vertice into whatever shape you want the pipe to be, then grab both of the corners, do Control-Shift-B to bevel it, add a bunch of cuts, and now you have a pipe shape, but it's just a string of verts. So what are you going to do? Well, convert it to a curve and go into the curve settings, go into geometry, and add some bevel depth. Now you have a pipe, and you can basically change the resolution of it to whatever you want. And then when you're happy with it, you can go convert and convert it back to a mesh, and now you have a mesh pipe. Perfect, easy, like 3 clicks. Next one's real simple. Use the asset browser. You can get all sorts of CC0 assets for free. Learn how to use the asset browser, organize it well, set your files up somewhere where you know where they are, and you'll save a ton of time just dragging and dropping materials onto your model till you get something that looks right, dragging and dropping models into your scene, over building the same thing a million and a half times and just wasting a ton of time. Also, while I'm at it, read the manual, because Blender actually has a manual and it's actually pretty good. It used to be a little bit hard to understand stuff, but they've put a lot of effort and time into rebuilding the manual, and it's really become very useful. So go dig through it. I've met the people behind Blender. I went to Blender conference this year. They are wonderful, amazing people, and they put a ton of their personal and professional time into building a very thorough set of documentation for the software, and it's just getting more thorough. So if you have a question, go there first and then come to the forums. Don't ask the same question that 800 people have already asked that is answered in page 2 of the manual, because you'll just get a bunch of people yelling at you. Ask me how I know. Architecture modelers, I got you. If you're making baseboards or crown moldings 800 times a day, stop doing that. Instead, go to the board that you've created that's just a basic cube or rectangle and bevel one edge of it, go into here and set the profile type to custom, and then you can go into these presets and you can select crown molding, you can select cornice molding, you can select steps, or if none of those work for you, you can go back to default and define your own by just playing with this curve thing. And that is much, much faster than modeling any of that by hand. One of the things you'll find yourself doing more frequently than you might imagine is making mesh diamonds. What do I mean by mesh diamonds? I just mean quads that run not quite the direction that you'd expect on your mesh. And you can do that in a variety of different ways, including a little bit of a neat trick using the decimate modifier. But I think this one is probably by far the fastest and the easiest. And it has a few other side benefits that I want to show you. So first step is make some base topology for your diamonds. Basically, these quads will become the size of your diamonds, but they'll be run the opposite direction of this, basically a 45-degree turn. Then select all of them and go into the context menu and use poke faces. And that's going to turn this into a bunch of triangles with vertices at the center of each of the faces. And then go back into the context menu and do tries to quads. And that will give you diamonds. Look at that. And they stay perfect quads except for the edges, which are triangles. And there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with this. For example, if I take this and I continue to poke faces, and I do that 2 more times, I get this interesting shape. Now, what would this be useful for? Well, it turns out if you go into vertex selection mode and you select each of these vertices, we could go through that and do each of them at once, but instead what I want you to do is go back into the context menu and do select similar, which is a menu you should familiarize yourself with, because not only can you select by number of adjacent edges, which is what we're going to do, but you can select faces by their size, you can select stuff by normal, basically anything that you can think of that might be a similar feature of something you're trying to select, you can select by, and that makes selecting huge areas that just share similar features really easy. So we're going to do select similar, and we're going to use the amount of connecting edges, and that's going to give us all of these. And then I'm going to do Control-Shift-B to bevel the vertices, and that will make us little circles. And then I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to change this to normal if it's not already set that way, and set this to individual origins so we can move all of these individually along their normal. And I'm going to do grab and lock it to the Z axis with Z control. And I'm just going to push these in a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude them down and extrude them back up. And I'm going to do Shift E to tighten the edge for subdivision mode. Now you can't see that tightened edge until we add subdivision, but you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Now you can use the hotkey for subdivision, which is just Control and then the number of divisions you want. I'm going to do 2. And look at that, instant padded fabric with buttons. Now, there's a lot of topology here, and it's not necessarily the most efficient way to do this, although it is actually pretty efficient considering. But you could apply this technique to basically any shape, including like a complex chair. I'm just using a cube as an example. And once it's applied, if you need a lower poly example, you can create a mesh that overlaps it and bake the high topology down to a normal map, and you'll get a really nice, accurate looking mesh. And the last tip is sort of a meta tip, and it's to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any more tips. No, I'm kidding, but you actually should subscribe to the channel. The real last tip is, in 3D, the second you've decided you know everything about a specific subject, you're behind because everybody else is going to continue to learn and get better than you. So never stop learning.